Hey guys, how's it going? Kripparrian here. Today I have a Last Epoch video, and because most of the content here is Battlegrounds, I thought I'd throw it out there. This is not a sponsored video. Last Epoch is an action RPG, started off on Kickstarter, and it had a pretty good fan following while it was in development for the last few years, and it is officially releasing Wednesday at noon Eastern. I bought this game couple years ago and didn't really log in. I bought it because I knew eventually I'd try it, and eventually came like a week ago. Now, before I tried the game, I actually made a build that, by my standards of what I know about the game now, after playing the game honestly for like 25 hours at most, is garbage. And I took that garbage build through a lot of the game, and obviously there were challenges because it wasn't easy, but it was doable. It's a game that is surprisingly approachable and doesn't really compromise on complexity. There is a lot of complexity in the game. I think the one big standout for the game is that it seems like all the systems have like some real thought behind them, and that they wholly work together. And there's a lot of systems, so it's a pretty impressive feat that they have this kind of game engine behind it, and I had quite a bit of fun playing. So today I want to give you guys what I have learned from all of that. I made an extremely refined build by what I now know about the game, and I thought I'd share it to give you guys at least some idea about what I'm going to be playing, because I will be playing Last Epoch all day, probably at least a couple days, just to see what it's like. If you guys are interested, come by the stream, of course. And those of you that already play Last Epoch, this is a pretty good build. This is not just a pretty good build by my pretty noob standards. No, this is actually a pretty good build. I've taken it to people that actually have played this game for the greater part of the last few years that it was playable and in development. Of course, it is also a build that I made changes to in mind with the changes that are coming in patch 1.0, which is why you're seeing this video kind of like late-ish, like the game's like, I'm going to be releasing this video and it's coming out tomorrow. Okay, so the reason that is we got like the final pretty lengthy patch notes on Monday, like Monday afternoon. So I didn't really know what to expect, so I thought maybe my build that I had planned beforehand would be dead, but it's not. Did need a few changes, and today I want to give you guys the build and those changes. So I am not going to do like in-game footage, but basically it is a build that has a bunch of minions, but it's a melee build, and every single attack freezes every enemy around you. So I go around, the monsters the minions follow me. When I teleport, the minions in part teleport with me. You can see everything is frozen. I'm barely getting hit. Now, the character that you're seeing on the screen has extremely bad gear for the build that I'm planning to play, because I basically did my playthrough with the build that, again, was not very good. And then I did a lot of theory crafting and stuff, and I came to the build that I'm going to highlight for you guys today, but I didn't really gear up this character for that build because it happened in reverse order. Okay. So if you want to see kind of like boss damage, this is a corruption 136, which is not crazy high, but again, the gear is garbage, and this is an actual boss in the monolith system. He has like a phase, and phase 2 happens when he hits like half-life. So again, it's a pretty weak setup, but the boss gets pretty damn melted. So the damage is pretty good. There are a few changes from that version that have to do with the changes that they've announced for 1.0, the launch on Wednesday. So it is a necromancer. Necromancers are pretty cool. I like to get like the armor, the vitality, general minion nodes. Flat damage is really powerful in this game. I will have a link to this build below. There are a few things that I haven't seen any minion build do, and I do want to kind of outline those. One thing is the vanguards. I think the scaling vanguards are actually pretty good if you scale enough flat damage. And I'm using Aura of Decay, which is not something I've really seen in any summoners, especially non-poison builds. The phrase is coming from Apogee of Frozen Light. So when a minion dies, you get a stack of Frozen Vengeance. The stacks last 8 seconds, and you get up to 8 stacks. So if you lose a bunch of minions, you get 8 stacks. I'm using a zombie that's not on the skill bar, because I can proc it by using the potion, or you can put it on the bar, cast it, because it'll just keep rezzing. You do need this ring to kind of combo with the sword. They're both very common, however. This ring is your volatile zombies have a chance to resurrect 100% divided by your number of zombies. What that means is if you have 4 zombies, each one has like a 25% chance to res. They basically run into the target and blow themselves up. That's kind of how the volatile zombie works. But basically, your very last zombie will never not res, because at that point you have 1 zombie, so it's 100% chance. So basically, you have a zombie minion following you around, teleporting with you, and anytime there's monsters nearby, it blows itself up, reses right away, blows itself up. Now, this explosion damage is not like that crazy, which is why we're not speccing into zombie, but we're doing this to combo with Apogee of Frozen Light, which gives me the opportunity to have vengeance stacks like infinitely. It's an infinite amount of vengeance stacks. Every single attack that character does, it will freeze the greater part of the entire screen. And freeze does not DR from my understanding in last Epoch, and it's actually extremely hard to get frozen effects otherwise. The freeze doesn't scale with the damage, it scales by amplifying the ailment, which is based on the base damage of that ailment, which is not necessarily the base damage of the skill. And all in all, you're basically not freezing a whole lot of stuff, even if you make a freeze build. This is an astoundingly powerful freezing effect when it comes to last Epoch. It gives you +3 to cold and necrotic minion skills, which includes Skeleton Mage, Summon Wraith, which is the primary 2 things that we're doing damage with. And we get a more multiplier, up to 24 more cold and necrotic damage to chilled enemies. And the Frozen Vengeance buff lasts 8 seconds, freezes for 3, and it gives all of your minions Frenzy, which is a pretty significant attack speed buff, and 24 more damage to chilled enemies. So all of their damage gets multiplied. Multipliers in last Epoch are generally pretty rare, so having 2 multipliers on the same weapon is actually really good. We haven't really seen too many builds use this item because it can be pretty tricky to scale lots of minions with cold. You really only scale like the mage. And I haven't really seen anyone do it with necrotic, but this build actually does scale it with necrotic. So that's kind of the 2 combo there, which enables the build. You get like some pretty heavy duty damage multipliers, constant frenzy, and lots of freezing. The kickback is that you actually have to hit an enemy with a melee attack. So again, I've never seen a minion build use Harvest, but we are using Harvest. And if I was looking at it, it's like, this skill's not that bad. We get a call, we can do 12, or we can put like 8, 1 point in there. Or, yeah, you have some options. So you can get up to 12% more damage from the call effect. Every 13 hits that you get, it gives you a 4-second damage multiplier for your minions. 5 points, 65 multi. It's not a small multi at all. 5 more damage, and it gives the minions prioritized so you don't have to use your A key constantly. And 250% increased crit chance with minions. And if you're wondering if that's a lot, yes, that is a lot. I did the math, and the Skeleton Mages will easily get 100% chance to crit, and the Wraiths will get like 91 or so, unless I get another source. But with the planned setup, it would just be about 90-ish. But this buff is providing like half of that, so it's enormous. And you don't have to spec for crit yourself because you can get base crit on the ability. And there's these modifiers for Acolyte gear that give you crit chance with minions and crit chance with your character. Okay. The tech that is also extremely unusual is the Aura of Decay. Now, Aura of Decay is kind of like Righteous Fire and Path of Exile, except it's poison. So you constantly poison yourself, and you constantly poison those around you. Sounds pretty good, right? Well, the thing is that those around you includes your minions, and whenever you deal damage to those around you, you also deal damage to yourself. And those have the same scaling multipliers. If you go around the internet and see like builds that use Aura of Decay, most people are complaining that they just turn it on and die. The way we get around this is we get literally no damage. Okay, like a lot of summoners use the blood aura for like damage. No, this build gets no damage. All of the damage is coming from the minions, and that actually allows me to use Aura of Decay on the character. Again, it's not even really designed for this build. The self-damaging poison was doing about 7 damage per second, which is not a lot. You get like 3,000 life in this game. The really big tech here is percent of missing life healed, 8% per second. So this is actually scalable with healing effectiveness, not health regeneration. That's not regeneration. It's a heal that happens once every second. And basically, I realized that you can get 1,200 healing effect. You can actually get more than that if you want. But yeah, the idea is that we get lots of healing to create a character that regenerates all of its life every second. Okay, we scale that 8 to 100. And, you know, if you're a math nerd, you know how cool that is. But if you're not, basically, if you regenerate 8% of your health every second, it takes you a really, really, really long time to go from no health to full. And if you regenerate like half, it's like so much shorter. And if you have it full, it's 1 tick, right? So it's really big. So defensively, it also gives you 50% less poison damage taken, and you can get another 20 if you want. I was actually thinking of maybe getting the slow nodes, because slow actually works on bosses. Get a few options there. But it's not for nothing. The aura gives poison chance to the minions in the aura 100%. And poison does do damage. It scales with general minion damage, which we have quite a bit of. And we have nearby poison damage for minions, 75 multiplier. So I tested this with the build, and again, in the fairly scuffed version, this was like 10 to 15% of the build's damage. So like, you know, if you take off this aura and use like a golem or something, that golem will do about that. It'll do like 10 to 15% of your overall damage. So it's not like you're really giving up much. It is providing damage. If you build around it, it provides what is basically the craziest healing in the entire game from what I've seen. And you get 50 poison DR, which is extremely strong in my opinion, because at high corruption, the damage over time is one of the hardest things to mitigate, and poison is damage over time, so that can get really crazy. The other pretty interesting thing is Aura of Decay is a toggle skill. So if you have Aura of Decay on your bar and you press it, the aura goes on, and it doesn't go away until you press it a second time. So what I actually do is I use the Aura of Decay, and then I move the golem on my bar, and I actually use a golem. So I use an unskilled golem, so I don't even really lose the 10% damage from not having a golem. It doesn't do full damage because it's not a skilled up golem, but an unskilled golem still does some damage, and it still gets hit quite a bit, which is very interesting, which is why you saw the golem in those highlights. The other part is the Necrotic Shade. Necrotic Shade gives a flat amount of necrotic damage, and another flat 12 if you get Lingering Doom. You can put it on your minions, and it affects all of your minions unless you make all for one spect. I would not recommend that. I initially made a build where I just juice one minion. It was a lot worse, despite what you might see in other build guides. It might be a different playstyle that you might like, but in terms of damage throughput, it's a lot worse. And you are affected by the aura. And you might be thinking, it's like, why do you want to be affected by the aura? Because you don't really want to do damage. Well, this actually gives additive damage, so it doesn't increase the poison damage of the Aura of Decay. But we mostly do it for this. You get armor per vitality, which does affect you. So 1 vitality will give your character 25 armor. And that's actually an extremely high amount of vitality, and it makes vitality a premium stat for this build. The main damage is going to come from the summon rates, and it used to come from the 2 flame rates, and it was a caster build. And in today's launch of the 1.0 patch notes, they were nerfed quite a bit, actually. They nerfed their range, they lost 20% of their damage, so you need like another 25 multi to catch up. And honestly, the base rates were pretty good already. Like, the flame ones were better, but they were pretty good. So now I'm going with melee rates. We're just using the regular summon rates, but they're actually buffing this node, the sequel of Avarice. It's going like to 180. So you gain a little bit of extra damage, and I think it's also upping the melee area, which is really big because I think area scales linearly in this game. It's a lot bigger area if they even move it up a little. And it gives some minion health. So the minions are going to be even tankier, but really they weren't dying. And honestly, you don't really care if they die because you're just playing minions and going around cleaving. It's not, you know, you can afford to cast a minion every now and then if you need to. We get the base crit, and this is why the build works so well, because the two minions that get lots and lots of base crit are Wraiths and Skeleton Mages. Base crit plus 15%. Prior to the patch notes coming out, I was using the base Skeleton Mage, which honestly is really quite good. But now I've decided to tune the build and focus on melee. So we're using Death Knights. We're using an army of Death Knights. We teleport using the spawn a Death Knight. Death Knights are never really going to die because they have ward regen and the leech off crits. But you know what? If they die, you're automatically casting a new one each time you teleport, which is close to on cooldown. So it should be pretty easy on that end as well. There are a few other changes that I can't really display in the build guide right now. There's like a new belt with lots more armor. There's a new glove that has your armor applies damage reduction to damage over time, which is really powerful modifier. They actually nerfed Death Rattle, but because we're running an army of minions and they all have almost 100% chance to crit, Death Rattle is still probably the amulet of choice, but there is one that is quite good as well, and I'm told it's extremely common. It is the Fang. So in the gear, I have one roll of physical resist, so the implicit is not wasted. And because we're using entirely melee minions, the up to 16 melee damage for minions counts for quite a bit. I don't know how valuable your minions cannot be stunned is. Possibly not that valuable, but it's pretty good. And amulets that are unique come from Age of Winter. Rings that are unique come from Age of Winter. And these boots are dropped by the Age of Winter boss. So the sword is super common. There's 7 swords that have a global drop. So you can use your unique generators for the sword and probably have a pretty easy time gearing out. This gear is not crazy ambitious. And I do have a leveling version of the build as well. If you guys want to check out that, I'll have it in the link below. On my second playthrough, I've only played the game for 20 hours at this point. I went through the campaign with a Zoo minion build and completed all of it, including the +1 skill point, in 3 hours. So it's pretty good. Hope you guys learned something. We'll see you guys next time.